session started earlier. It's like 6 o'clock right now, something like that. But I had to come to work to sort out some problems. When duty calls, duty calls. Appreciate you guys as always for coming through and checking out the episodes. Today we have a pretty interesting session as we're going to be heading over to the gardens. It is Saturday. It's a Labor Day weekend. Should be a ton of action, a ton of fun. But before we get into today's episode, a quick thing that I want to let you guys know about. And that's going to be that we're going to be hosting our very first meetup game, October 15th on Saturday from 1 to 7 p.m. We're going to be doing a 1-2 game deep stacks at the Hustler Casino here in Los Angeles, California. So if you guys want to save the date, make the effort to come down. We're going to be doing a ton of giveaways as always, splash pots, you name it, probably going to be doing it. Otherwise, let's get into today's session. Let's hope that we can run pretty good. And like we talked about in the last session, let's just work on, I don't know, having fun. Let's enjoy ourselves today.
Let's hop right into today's episode. Just a quick note, guys, we're actually playing the 5, 10, 20 game. It's going to be a 2K max, so we're in here for the absolute maximum. Things are going, and they're going quickly, so buckle up for a pretty fun session. In this very first hand, I'm in the straddle for $20. Someone from early position decides to raise to $60. Looks like a pretty solid pro. The big blind makes a call. The action's on me. We look down at ace-jack offsuit. This plays as a good call, a great 3-bet. I'm going to go ahead and play this a little more passively, considering I have no idea on the dynamics of the table. I then making the call, and we're going off to a flop that comes 10-4-4 with 2 diamonds and a club. With the action checked over to the initial raiser, he decides to make a c-bet here. Big blind folds, and the action is now back on me. I do contain a diamond. In fact, I do have the jack of diamonds. Be a little better if I had the ace of diamonds here, but you can't be too picky. Beggars cannot be choosers. So I'm going to go ahead and make the ace high call here. I can definitely be ahead of a ton of my opponent's range. After we go off to a turn card that comes as 6 of hearts, I decided to check it, and I suspect that my opponent's going to be checking the entirety of his range here. He does in fact check, and we're going off to a river card that comes a jack of hearts. So we go from just hoping to get the showdown and to now being able to bet for value. I decide to bomb this river here for $350. Considering that the diamonds do break out and I do hold a diamond, that's actually a pretty good thing. I can credibly bluff here with my diamonds, and if I did, I'd probably want to go bigger. I make it $350 to go. My opponent is deep into the tank before eventually deciding on a call. Nice. We end up taking that one down. Like I said, I expect that we're going to be getting called by all middling pairs and most ace highs. Pretty happy with the way we played that hand, and there is a small chance we got lucky on the river, but either way, seems to be in my favor tonight. This session continues to move along here. And early position decides to raise to $50. Early position is actually in front of the vlog. A massive shout out to you, Max. It was a pleasure playing with you. The action is folded over to me in the big blind, and I look down at pocket jacks. Feels like a 3-bet is in order. Playing out of position and just flatting here seems pretty weak most of the time, so 3-bet or fold seems like the best way to play. I make it $200 to go. Going 4x seems pretty standard. Out of nowhere, the straddle decides to cold call, and the early position player, Max, decides to call as well. We're going off to a flop here that comes 9-4 deuce with the 9 of diamonds. It is a rainbow board texture. On this board texture, I won't be having a great deal of c-bets here, so as you guys have seen me do before, I actually like to check here and play a little bit deceptively. With the action checked over to the initial raiser, he actually decides to throw out a bet for $275. Now, the question becomes, is there any merit in raising? I definitely think there is, but in this specific dynamic, I'm going to go ahead and go against that judgment. The reason being is the person directly to my left here in the straddle, he only has about $700 in his stack. If I raise here, I won't reopen the betting. I'd prefer to just make the flat call here, allow him to jam, our opponent in early position to just make the flat call, and I can rejam, putting the pressure on him. These are the things that you have to be, cognitive of that's going on at the table. All these little things that go along, the nuances of the game is what people may refer to it as. I just make the call, and unfortunately the big blind does not raise, but he doesn't fold. He just makes a call. So we're going 3 ways off to a turn card. It comes at 10 of diamonds. Of course, the straddle can still have pocket 10s here since he did cold call, but again, I'm not really worried about the monsters under the closet. I end up checking, continue playing in flow. It checks over to the initial raiser Max once again, who decides to bet for max value, it seems like. He bets out $300 with the action now on me. At this point, in this juncture of the hand, I feel like raising is really much the best play I can do. It'd be really hard for me to go to a river without charging this backdoor flush draw. The straight draws are available. And more than that, it's going to be really hard to get any value on the river. So I decided to throw in the raise here for $800, doing things again very unorthodox, but just playing the dynamics that I'm feeling. The big blind, or the straddle, excuse me, ends up making the fold, and the action's now back on Max. He thinks about it for quite some time before eventually deciding on a fold. He's going to go ahead and save himself some extra bit of money. He had somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,000 behind. And again, if we got it all in, it would have been fine. I would have been pretty happy with the outcome, no matter what it may be. But for now, we're going to go ahead and take this pot down. Pretty juicy, pretty excited with the weird way that we ended up playing it. On the very next shuffle, we pick up another good spot where I wanted to go over it, even though it's a small pot. The action folds to me, and there is a straddle on, and I'm in the small blind with Queen 8 offsuit. This is a really bad hand, and it doesn't play that great out of position, but I think I'm pretty confident in understanding that besides the big blind in this hand, I feel like the straddling player, who's also a friend of the vlog, so shout out to him, I also feel like these players are going to be playing a little more tight, more of a likelihood of 3-betting with strong hands and just getting away with a lot of marginal holdings. So I end up making the raise here to $80. Only the straddler makes a call, and we're going off to a flop that comes King 6 deuce with 2 diamonds. With the action on me, this is a really powerful thing in poker and something that I've been implementing myself, and that's by throwing in the down bet, throwing in the small continuation bet. I only lead for $65. I think this board texture just crushes my range and doesn't hit my opponent's range all that often. I'm going to have all the kings here. I'm going to have all the 6s, all the deuces. Of course, my opponent can have 6s and deuces himself, but beyond that, not a whole lot more for value. Flush draws exist, of course, but this is just a hand that I'm going to be putting in that 3-barrel bluffing, blasting off range if I need to. Either way, it doesn't come to it. He ends up making the fold, but just a small thing. Don't be afraid to just throw out a small or c-bet. I think, again, people just get carried away and feel like they have to just blast off, and that's just not the case in poker, at least not in today's day and age. Things are continuing to move in our right direction, as we have not been able to not see some good hands early on in the session. With the action on Max, the friend of the vlog, he's in early position, he limps for 20 bucks. The action's on me in the big blind, and I look down at ace queen of spades. An isolation raise is definitely in order, so I make it $105 to go. I can even go a little larger if my opponents are a little more limp call happy, but 105 seems okay. Only the early position limper decides to make the call, and we're going off to a flop that comes Jack 6-3, 2 clubs, and a diamond. With the action on me, this is a prime example of a really bad board for my hand and my range altogether. Not going to be having any really strong hands here besides maybe pocket jack, so I end up just making the check here. I'd probably do the same thing with jacks anyways. Our opponent, luckily enough, decides to check it back, and we're going off to a turn card that comes at Jack of Hearts. Pairing the board here, I can actually start betting here for value. We can get called by a lot of inferior holdings, as well as equity deny against hands that, again, have equity against us. I make it $50 to go as a very small quarter-sized pot bet. My opponent tanks for quite some time before deciding on a call. Don't know if he was considering raising, didn't seem like it. Maybe he was just honestly thinking about what he should do. Either way, we're going off to a river card that comes as 7 of clubs. This now brings in the very obvious 4-5 straight that was there, as well as the initial flush draw that was there on the flop. With the action on me, again, I think my hand's pretty strong, and I don't want to have to call a really big bet on the river. I do have ace high, again, that can be good here a decent amount of the time, and I can actually get called by worse ace highs. I make it $25 as a blocker bet. Again, my goal here is just to bet and fold. If he's bluffing, totally give the credit for him, tip your cap off, and let him know, nice bluff. After a little bit of thinking, Max decides to raise here to $175. Pretty easy fold for us. Feels like we lost the minimum, and if we got bluffed for the minimum. So it is what it is. These blocker bets are really fun. Small bets are really fun, and it's something that I'm, like I said, trying to work on adding to my game.
When I say this game is dusty, man, do I mean it's dusty. It's never good when you can recognize 5, 6 of the different faces here at the game, let alone the fact that there is one recreational maybe. So not going to be here for very long. Might even switch tables later on. Obviously we're like running pretty good, so you know, I'm always cool with the battle, but if it gets shorthanded and it's just a bunch of regs, I'm probably just gonna bounce. So either way, let's get back in the episode.
In this following hand, another friend of the vlog, he decides to raise from the cutoff to 60 bucks. I'm on the button, and we look down at a7 offsuit. Not a good enough hand to just call with. Feels like folding here like 80% of the time makes sense, but 20% of the time, 3-betting is fine, it seems like. I make it $200 to go. Straddler Max decides to make the call here, the cold call, as well as the cutoff decides to call as well. We're going off to a flop that comes Queen 6-6 Rainbow. All right, not a great board for me. If it checks over to me, like I said, I've pretty much succumbed to the fact that I'm not going to be getting this pot shipped in my direction. There's no reason to bluff multi-way, although I am in position. This is just not a very good flop for myself. With the action starting off on max, he actually decides to throw out the lead here. $250 to go. The cutoff makes a call. This is a pretty easy fold for me, but let's stay into this hand because I guess you guys would want to see the outcome. It's pretty interesting. The turn card comes a jack of spades, introducing a backdoor flush draw. With the action checked over to the cutoff, he decides to bet $500. After a bit of thinking, Max decides to make the call here. And at this point, I'm assuming one of these gentlemen has a queen of some sort or maybe a really slow played overpair. Really hard to tell at this point. Maybe even a hand like 7-6 or 8-6 suited is feasible. At least it is more likely for the cutoff than it is for the straddle cold caller. Either way, we're going off to a river card with a ton of money in the middle that comes a 3 of hearts. With the action checked over once again to the initial raiser, he decides to throw out a bet for $700. All right, this is now a pretty tough spot for Max. I'd imagine that he's going to be wanting to fold a great deal of his range here. The only hands that, should even consider calling probably are going to be a hand like ace-queen, which I'd assume in a great, it's going to be often that he's going to have a hand that strong if he's willing to donk lead. Either way, he decides to inevitably make the call here. The straddler does not show down after the cutoff, decides to show 6-3 of diamonds. Wow, that's pretty interesting. Either way, admittedly so, he immediately says that he did get lucky there. He did. A boat is good. It's a very good hand to have. Either way, just thought you guys would be interested in that. Even in a game that might be stuck in the muck, there's still going to be the chance that somebody wants to get a little out of line. Obviously, my 3-bet there was a bluff, but I was getting called by a significantly weaker holding. Either way, we're going to go ahead and move along here. We have a couple more hands to go over now. The next hand, I look down at pocket Kieran's pocket kings. Early position, I decided to make it $60 to go. Only Max, who's, I guess, the star of today's show, decides to make the call. We're going off to a flop that comes A7-5, 3 diamonds, monotone. Ugh, that's disgusting. Aces, kings, they're always like magnets for the opposite card here. And as you guys can see, the board has come ace high, but after further review, we do at least have the king of diamonds drawing out to the nuts here. With the action on my opponent, he decides to do something really unorthodox once again by leading out here. Max has definitely shown a lot of situational betting, and leading here is really interesting. On a monotone board that's ace high, I'm assuming he's going to be super strong, and even more so when he's betting over the size of the pot. Well, with my exact hand, it'd be foolish to make the fold here, so I end up making the call. We're going off to a turn card that comes a 10 of spades. Doesn't change anything really to the board texture. Again, if my opponent is ahead, he's still pretty solidly ahead, although, like I said, we still have the nut flush draw. He decides to bet out $300. Not stopping anytime soon. It's still very worrisome, but again, I feel like it'd be very goofy to make anything here besides just a call. I do consider for a brief moment thinking about raising all in here as a bluff. Again, I think that sometimes if my opponent has a hand like ace-10 or ace-5, like some kind of random ace hand, obviously not a 2-pair holding, he's probably going to consider folding it. And again, I'd be turning my hand that's pretty strong into a bluff, which is probably not the greatest idea. So obviously I end up doing the opposite of that. I just make the call here. We're going off to a river card that is a beautiful 6 of diamonds. Exactly what we wanted to see here. We pick up the second nuts, as obviously 3-4 of diamonds is the super nuts. With the action on me after he checks to me, I'm pretty, it's very unlikely that he has a really good hand on this specific river. I doubt that he's going to have any flushes here. Maybe, just maybe, he has a hand like ace-jack with a jack of spades or ace-queen with a queen of spades. But more than likely, he's going to have some kind of 2-pair or, middling ace, I think, or at least that's what I'm putting him on. Of course, there are still some sets out there for our opponent to have. But again, I think that doesn't matter what I bet. Either my opponent's going to fold or my opponent's going to call. I end up jamming all in for $700 remaining is what he has. And he pretty quickly decides to fold face up a pocket 5s. A set of 5s here. Unlucky for our opponent here, obviously. Luckily for us, we do get bailed on the river. In hindsight, if we got all in, he's probably never folding. Even with understanding that he watches the vlogs, he knows how crazy I'm willing to get. So either way, really happy we can take this pot down. I feel like a lot of these spots have come up lately and they haven't come in our favor. And today, and specifically as of late, it has been. So happy for that. You gotta, admit these things when they happen and be happy that you're on the right side of variance again.
Another mid-session update, I guess, is what you would call this. We're actually moving from that dusty-ass 5-10 game, or the 5-10-20 game, which was already not that good. We just ran pretty well and found a good job of, I don't know, we played unorthodox. We're gonna head over to the 5-10 game now, or the 5-5-10, which is 800 max. Looks a little better. It's a new game starting up. Won't be here for much longer. Need to go home and edit these videos, or at least you get what I'm saying. Anyways, so let's just get in.
So with our fresh stack of $800 here in this 5-5-10 game after moving, we find ourselves early on in the session, or at least this new session, where the cutoff makes it $45 to go. The button makes the cold call, and I'm here in the small blind with ace-jack offsuit. This is a prime example of, utilizing ranges and dynamics of the table. I'm new to this game, but the average age of this game, as we mentioned, is like 65 years old. So why not just take advantage of these, what feels like dead money to me? I end up making the 3-bet here, going for a larger sizing of $250. Luckily for us, everyone makes a fold, and just like that, we end up printing a free 10 big blinds pre-flop. Being, understanding of these dynamics is really powerful, and 3-betting and expanding your 3-betting range and being studied on that in these games is like super profitable. Rounding out today's session, we have another really fun hand to go over. I have ace-9 offsuit here from the cutoff. Gonna go ahead and make it $30 to go. The button decides to make the call. He's been super call happy most of the night. And the action is now on the big blind, who decides to fold, and we're going off heads up to a flop that comes queen, 9, 6, 2 hearts, and a diamond. This is a really good board for me. I do pick up the coveted middle pair here, top kicker at least. The action on me, I'm going to bet for value here. I can get called by a ton of worse holdings. Flushes, straight draws, you name it, is probably out there. $40 is the new price of poker. Our opponent obliges by making the call. We're going off to a turn card that comes at 10 of hearts. Pretty much the nut low card. Flushes come in, straight draws come in. I just had to check here and pretty happy to just give up if he decides to bet. Luckily for us, he makes the check back. We're going off to a river card that comes at 7 of spades. This has been like the nut low run out. The only problem is our opponent can actually still have a hand that is inferior to ours or slightly better than ours, and I don't want to have to call a big bluff or a big bet here on the river. So I decide to once again implement the old blocker bet. I make it $20 to go, going somewhere in the neighborhood of like a fifth or a sixth of the pot. My goal here, as mentioned, is to not have to play a bigger pot. I don't want to have to check here and face like a $50, $75 bet and have to be put in a tough spot. I'd rather just bet really small here. If he raises, we can get away from it super easily. My opponent is very confused, and you can audibly hear him say that he doesn't know what the heck to do to my $20 bet.
20? Seriously?
And he ends up just making the call. I flip over ace-9 here. My opponent decides to flip over his hand, which is 10-8 of spades. He has a straight, so as you guys see there, even a hand as strong as a straight was not able to raise there. So the blocker bet does what it's supposed to do. We lose the minimum there. And just like that, our session has come to a close. Let's start over to me in person to see how the hell we feel after today's pretty solid session.
All right, something we talked about the very last time we were out here. The last session actually was come to terms with just taking the win and just kind of heading home if the game sucks or whatever the case may be. Today was the epitome of that. In the 5-5-10 game, the average age of the opponent in that game was conservatively 65 years old. And the pros, or at least the regs that were at the 5-10-20 game that we were playing originally, every single player except for one, I think. So yeah, not a great game. And there was only one 10-20 or 5-10-20 game going, and there was like a bunch of 5-5-10 games, but the list to change is absurd, and they have a big list to get in the game, let alone to change. So it was a disaster. I've been here for a couple of hours. I'm gonna take the win. We had a really solid day out today, even with the tough lineup. Cards fell in our favor, whether we played good or bad. It's neither here nor there. So after a pretty solid session, we were into the 5-10-20 game for 2K exactly. I didn't know that that's the most you could buy in for, but that's what it is. And then we were out of the game for 39.69. We were into the 5-5-10 game for 8 and out for 8.25. So book a small win in that one. overall just shy of 2K. We're gonna take that in a couple hours of play. How can you complain? Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching, man. It means so much to me. Like we mentioned, check out the Hustler date if you guys want to join in the meetup games. You guys can always check me out on Instagram. It's just definitely where I get a more personal one-on-one experience for you guys. Otherwise, let me know, how is your month of September treating you guys? Are you guys up? Are you guys down? That is going to be it for me here from the Gardens Casino. It is a lively night. I'm a little disappointed, I will say, in the games tonight for a Saturday long weekend, 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. Expect a little more, but either way, have a lovely day, folks. Stay happy, stay healthy, and more importantly, run good to the tables, y'all. Deuces.